Welcome back to another episode of Picking Up the Pixels RPG Love. I'm your host, Boston, and joining me as always is Musum.
Hello.
Not Musum. Man, I'm not gonna do another take on this one. This will be our keeper. If you want to support the show, you can do so at patreon.com/E1M1. The ones are numbers. Get all the cool early access, behind the scenes audio over there. The $5 a month tier is the recommended one, and that's per month, not per episode. So it's pretty cheap. I think I just looked at the stats. We have 1,200 episodes on the Patreon feed alone. So if you want to go check that stuff out, patreon.com/E1M1. The ones are numbers. Musum, what have you been playing this past month?
So first let me plug our spoiler cast for Horizon Forbidden West.
Yes,
that we
thank
did
you for
over
reminding me.
it's on the TVGP stream, right?
Yeah. I should have put it over here too.
Yeah. So also I can't stop playing it.
Okay.
I keep going back in. I'm like, well, I can just put this on story mode and go kill this enemy a bunch of times and get the armor and upgrade this weapon. And I said, like, the first week or two after the spoiler cast, I had that issue, and then it slowly went down.
Have you turned on easy looting in the options menu in Horizon?
Maybe I've not.
Okay, easy looting is really cool because if you kill an enemy and you don't break off the pieces you need, it will still let you loot those pieces.
Ooh,
so real late game, I was just like, I'm not sure what this option is gonna really do, and all of a sudden I was like, all right, yeah, I need 2 or 3 more pieces for this. The last level of the orange quality gear. I'm just gonna turn this on. I don't want to farm. This isn't Monster Hunter. I don't really want to farm this thing.
Yeah, I feel like they were a little out of balance with the amount you need to farm to get to 5 on those oranges.
Yeah, it's
and purple's
like
really
3
too.
Apex Thunderjaw hearts, and I was like, nope, don't wanna. I could maybe do 1. That's a cool fight, but 3 of them is just not gonna work.
Well, and especially the Apex ones, I don't think that's a guaranteed spawn, is it?
I had to do a little bit of Googling because I couldn't find it, and they're like, okay, find a spot where they spawn, go to a shelter, turn it to night, then fast travel over there, and then one will spawn, and if it doesn't, close the game. And I was like, okay, I'm not.
Oof.
I don't want to. This is too frustrating.
I
am glad that you did remember about our spoiler cast. If anyone wants to listen to it, if it's over on tvgp.tv. We had a really, really good chat. We had a quote-unquote quick chat for about an hour and a half, which is pretty standard for these shows. But we do kind of get really into the deep end with both games, and I thought we had a really good chat. So if you have played both of these games and you do want to hear kind of our completely spoilery thoughts on both of them, go check that out. It turned out really great.
Yeah. So then, where was I? Right. So I got sick and stayed home, which is how I was able to do this next one. And I was like, I've always wanted to play Radical Dreamers.
Oh yeah.
And so I did. So first thing that I believe is true on Radical Dreamers, because I died an hour in, and there's no save points in Radical Dreamers.
Right, because it's just a short-ish visual novel thing.
It's about 3.5 hours long, so that was
okay.
It was frustrating to replay through that hour, but then I looked up a walkthrough, because at first I was just kind of wandering around and trying to figure it out myself, and I mostly got there, but you're basically in a set mansion, and it's kind of operates like Zork or something like that, where you just have text descriptions of everything. But
yeah, it's a lot of you go into this hallway and there's 2 doors on the left and 1 on the right and 1 at the end. Which one do you want to go to?
Yeah. And it's so I didn't realize this was a prequel to Chrono Cross. For some reason I thought it was a prequel to Chrono Trigger.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And on top of that, it's prequel's probably the wrong word to use. I believe they originally brought it out for Super Nintendo, and this was meant as a sequel, a loose sequel to Chrono Trigger, and then they released it, and then they said, you know what? Let's do a cool version for PlayStation 1. And then they made Chrono Cross. So this is like an alternate reality thing that stars Sarge or Sergey. I don't know how to say the Chrono Cross protagonist's name. Is it Sarge or Sergey?
I always called him Surge, but I feel like
Surge.
maybe that. I feel like maybe that's. I feel like that's maybe like the white guy pronunciation, where it's like, it's Surge.
I feel like that's every thing I'm coming up with, so that would make more sense. I have no idea. Anyways, look it up. The game stars Surge. He doesn't look like Surge from Chrono Cross, and it also has Kid in it, and it has they call him like Magil or something like that, but it's
very clearly like Magus wink.
Yeah. They have very few kind of crossovers with Chrono Trigger. From the spoilers I know about on Chrono Cross, because I've never played through Chrono Cross.
Okay.
It loosely lines up with a lot of the stuff they do in that mid to end game. It evidently has 7 endings, which I don't think I'm ever going to see the other 6. It's like, I'm glad I played through it, and it was a neat experience. But I wish they had added save points and, you know, like real basic whatever stuff, especially since you can die and you're never really quite sure how close you are to death. It's just after battle, they'll be like, you're bruised up, or you're not sure if you can take too many more hits. And like, it'll eventually say like, you're about to go out, but you can't take too many more hits. Like, just like triggered my panic feelings like every time. And I'm like, oh gosh, what do I do? And then I encounter most of the enemy random encounters you get have like definitive paths you can take to not getting hit. But they have this one, the Griffith, who it's random every time on what it's going to do and what you do. So it's a lot of push and pull, but I guess they track stats of like they track how much damage you take, because you can die, and then they track how much Kid likes you, because I guess that affects the endings.
Interesting. Okay.
And I have no idea how to get the other endings. Like I started looking them up, and it sounded like a couple of them were kind of joke endings, but anyway.
It's probably normal visual novel stuff where it's like, this is the ending where everybody dies, and this is the ending where they fall in love.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like there have been a lot of especially the work that Digital Extremes is doing with kind of older game collections, where they're doing like for NES platformers, they'll do stuff where it's like, here's someone like a speedrunner's playthrough, or here's like a perfect playthrough where they don't get hit, and here's kind of every secret playthrough, and they have kind of a video you can watch of that stuff. And surprising to me, it's not super surprising coming out of Square Enix, but it's a little bit disappointing that they don't have an option where it's like, show me what the options are in game to get the best ending, or maybe like the canon ending. It's kind of a bummer there isn't that option of just like, just show me, like, just highlight the one in blue, where it's like, all right, just keep picking the blue ones, and that gets you the best one.
Yeah, and it feels silly too, because you look at the graphics and the interface, and like, it's clearly a Super Nintendo game. Like, I feel like, you know, occasionally new games come out for the Nintendo that some indie dev made. Like, Square can't just, you know, take an emulated version and add in some like quality of life efforts. Like, I feel like that'd take a programmer, like one of their programmers, like a week to do, and then they could call it good, because it's not an attractive game. Like, honestly, like, it's mostly text screens, and then occasionally you'll get a splash of an image, you know. So
and especially with the issues they had sort of porting and remastering Chrono Cross, it's not super surprising that Radical Dreamers also suffers from some issues, but you're right, it's kind of disappointing that there isn't so maybe a more universal emulator that at least could be licensed for this stuff. But if people weren't aware what the issues with Chrono Cross is, just like with every other game of that era, the source code is gone. So a lot of that stuff they're either sort of poorly emulating or rebuilding, which has its own issues.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, and I started Chrono Cross. I did not get far because that game is very complicated, like combat-wise.
You got to at least see the incredibly cool intro song with like one of the best RPG songs of all time.
Yeah, I'm really digging the music. I kind of got to the first town, and then I was like, I have no idea what any of those combat screens I just did meant. And then I looked up an FAQ and read for like the next hour, and I'm like, I am not ready for this in this moment, and haven't played it since, unfortunately. But
if I remember correctly, the game eases you into the combat kind of over the next couple of hours. So it does a pretty okay job at it from what I remember. But if you've just made it to the first town, you probably haven't run into the thing for Chrono Cross, because the thing in Chrono Trigger is time travel, and Chrono Cross has a different kind of thing, like its primary system. So,
but maybe I should give it another chance. I was thinking like PlayStation 1 game, there's no way this game's going to teach me how to play it. Like it's probably like expects me to read a manual or something somewhere. And so reading the FAQ of this'll change the battlefield color and
don't even worry about that for like 10 hours. Like the thing about Chrono Cross that I remember at the beginning is like you have your basic attack, you have your spells, which are all kind of like here's a fire one and a water one and a cure one and stuff like that, and that's going to be the stuff that you're focusing on for the first couple hours. Changing the battlefield color and stringing together attacks that have different costs to them, that stuff isn't going to matter for a while.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot better, because that little intro dream dungeon was like, I don't know what the difference between these attacks are, and they're just giving me percentages. And
I wouldn't worry too much. And overall, I remember Chrono Cross being genuinely a pretty easy game overall. I think if you're probably a veteran, you can worry about some of the more complicated stuff. But on your first playthrough, I would just kind of get in there and just play it.
Okay, I'll give it another try then.
Yeah.
So next, because I've just been kind of like, since Horizon finished, like I haven't wanted to. I don't know why I started Chrono Cross, because I haven't wanted to commit myself to another 50-hour plus game.
Right.
And I keep, like, all the games I own are 100-hour games, unfortunately. So I keep dipping my toes in one and going to the other. So I play a little bit more Shin Megami Tensei 5. I'm luckily, in the next big open world area. The area I'm in, I have to find a certain amount of humans that demons have captured, type of thing. And currently I have an NPC that heals me after every battle, so I really don't I have one human left and I don't want to find them. I want to keep exploring the map.
Right.
I think I may have reached the map's limits. It's a kind of a difficult game to remember what the heck was going on story-wise, because I can't talk to anyone about it, because it's huge spoiler, like of what they do with the story, I feel like. And I feel like it's a genuinely kind of new, I don't want to say new take. I want to say like they take your expectations for a Shin Megami Tensei game and they don't completely turn on its head, but they do something a little bit different with it, and you have a little bit more story moments with it because of that. And more NPCs you run into, but that game's still pretty cool. I think I'm gonna push it forward soon, but kind of the last two games I'm going to mention are the ones I'm probably going to stick with for the next month, but we'll see. Which I'm almost there. I dip my toes in a lot of places. Then I'd been dreading turning on Shining Force 1 again, because I thought I was at this really grindy part, and I loaded it up and I ground the battle a little bit further, and then realized, wait, I'm still missing like 2 characters. I don't have the robot yet, and I don't have the samurai yet. And so I pushed the story forward a little bit better, and feel a little bit better for that. And
nice.
Shining Force 1, kind of the way the leveling system works is you get 2 classes per character, and once you change class, like, you can't go back to the first class.
Okay, so sort of
So
like how Final Fantasy 1 did, where it's like you're upgrading your class to one of these other advanced classes.
And you can like upgrade once you reach, I can't remember if it's 10 or 12 or 15, but like the max level is 20 on your first class.
Okay.
But you want to go ahead and grind 20 to get all the stat boosts. But like most of the stat boosts are random, so you're hoping it's worth it.
Right.
So it's a lot of me grinding these characters to 20 and then upgrading them, and then, oh, the weird flying egg creature doesn't have another class. I didn't have to do this right now.
Oh.
The dragon may be in the same boat. I don't remember. I should probably Google it. But anyway, that's a nice like comfort food. See some ridiculous stuff.
Yeah, it's not the most like heavy lifting RPG you can play.
Yeah, and like I'm not super far from the end, so I want to go ahead and kind of beat it. And then they just added Shining Force 2, to the Nintendo emulation stuff. So
right.
I'm also kind of toying with the idea because the Gaiden games, which were re-released as Shining Force CD for Sega CD, are 2 Game Gear games that take place in between Shining Force 1 and 2.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
And I'm really tempted to play through that, but the one time I did play through it, like they were trying some really neat inventive stuff that was really freaking hard. Like they were like your troop they were on a ship and the ship crashed and now you're on the beach and you have to fight these guys, but all your weapons are in the sand. And like,
oh,
the way you search for stuff in Shining Force is you walk up to a square and then hit the search button.
Right, and it searches on that square.
Yeah, and it's not
right.
Like, unless it's a treasure chest or something, it's not evident there's something there. And then after you search it, you then on your next turn have to go in your equip menu and equip whatever you find. So,
wow. So you're burning a lot of turns.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's washing up on the beach and looking for weapons was it's a neat idea that they needed a better interface for.
Right.
But they were working with Game Gear, so maybe I shouldn't fault them for it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know. We'll see if even my save game battery works on my Sega CD still. I think.
Right.
I feel like it's gone out on me like twice since I bought the thing a few years ago. But
yeah.
Anyhow, then I was just itching for something. I just wanted like I don't know, like a 20-hour game, like some type of thing that wouldn't be too difficult to learn, that was fun. And I had downloaded Scarlet Nexus through Game Pass a long time ago on Xbox Series X.
I really have to start this game.
For some reason, I had it in my head this was like the anime Dark Souls, and that was not it at all.
Oh yeah, that's I don't remember what that game is called. I'm gonna Google anime Dark Souls, and it's gonna come up with Code Vein. That's what it is.
Code Vein.
Also, literally the first result when I Googled anime Dark Souls.
That's awesome. So Scarlet Nexus, it's a game that I always forget the name of, that the Nymph has talked about a lot on TVGP.
Yep.
And I'm not super far in, but I love this game. Like,
yeah,
it is very good looking. Like when it opens up, you get to choose between a guy and a girl character, and I'm like, yeah, let's try the girl character. And her deal is she gets telekinesis, and what you'll do is you'll have these telekinetic knives that are one attack. But while you're doing that, you hold down a button, and she will throw like cars and bookshelves and crates and whatever
vending
else
machines. Like, it's really cool.
It's such a fun combat system, and the fact that you're doing them both at once, and it's got kind of this, and I don't quite have the grace for it yet, but the way the combat system is designed is you generate energy for your telekinetic attacks with your just like knife telekinetic attacks, and it's designed so that you can, an enemy's far away, so you're going to use a TK attack, and then you press this button and she'll kind of fly in like all of a sudden. You'll do a few hits and do another TK attack, and then you'll push another button and she'll fly back to give you some time to generate power. And she has a character tree, and I think the other character, or at least the other protagonist guy, can too. But you appear to get like a handful of characters, and it's all like level based, but the levels feel very open worldish. Like it's very like detailed graphically.
Yeah, when I played the demo, I was pretty impressed with how big each one of the levels are. It's not just like a corridor. It's a fairly standard JRPG kind of dungeon thing, but in the modern world. But I was sold very much early on in the demo too, where they're like, oh, hold down these 2 buttons to do your 2 telekinesis attacks. And the character just rips telephone poles out of the ground and starts hitting an enemy with it. And I was like, that is incredible. Where's this game been all my life?
They have like an alternate TK attack where you can lift an extra heavy object. They'll usually kill the character, and then like you can do that on sun enemies, and enemies won't die unless you do that, and then use another attack where she like rips out this glowing orb out of them. Like it is a visual feast. Like it is a very good looking game that has a lot of really cool style to it. The story moments kind of throw me off a bit. Like they're weird because they're going for like a Persona thing, I think. But they're trying to do their own take on it. So like you'll get a still capture of like your characters in the 3D environment, like at a camera angle, and then they'll put the 2 characters on top of it over it where their mouths will move, but they won't move in the background.
Right.
And they'll go through a couple of those cuts, but in Persona they move in the background. They just keep the thing going, and it took a moment to get used to seeing, but I'm really liking it so far. And I think I read this was like a 20 or 30 hour game, so that's kind of what I need right now.
I think it's on the shorter end because it's expecting you to play through one character's playthrough and then go play through the other character's route, because I get the impression it's at a couple of points in the story they kind of branch off, and one person goes X place and one person goes Y place, and then they kind of crisscross a couple of times. So I get the impression a lot of people have said, like, I finished the first playthrough and I think I'm okay, but I've heard some people say, I played both of them and it's a cool thing they're doing.
To me, that just sounds like I'm going to finish the first playthrough and then maybe in a year I'll do the second one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That seems right. Because like I definitely want to get back to some of these other games I'm talking about, and I feel like there's we probably have it in our news stories. I don't have that document open, but there's something that's coming out in June that I think I'm going to want to replay at that point anyway.
Yes, that is in our news stories, yeah.
Okay. And then last but not least, I received a tweet from you the other day that was like, hey, you should check out this game, Citizen Sleeper. And you had a really cool image. And then I Googled it, and I Googled Switch gameplay because I thought, well, if this is a visual novel thing, I feel like I want to sit in bed and do it. And just kind of skim through it. In those brief moments of music and graphics, I was like, I have to play this. This looks amazing.
If for anyone watching the video version, I have a gameplay over here on the right-hand side.
Perfect.
But this is the only RPG I've played this month, and it came out 2 days ago, I think, on the 5th. It's literally the only thing that I have been playing for the last couple of days.
It's only $15, and it's Citizen Sleeper if we didn't say it. But.
Yeah, it's also on Game Pass as well. That's where I'm playing it on my Series X. But yeah, it's only like $15. I think PC $18, less than $20, which is kind of a steal. It is. I played a game like this before, which I'll get to here in a second, but it's best described as a combination of tabletop RPG and visual novel. So essentially, you have your kind of text-heavy stuff that's visual novel related, and the writing is impeccable in this. It is so good, and the way that you deal with there's just a really loud car out there. The way that you play this game is very much like a game that I played before called Tharsis, which is you start your day with X number of dice that have already been rolled, and you use those to interface with the game itself. So like if you're gonna go do a job at a bar, for example, it will give you uh, a thing to say like, oh, I want to mix drinks or I want to go be a bouncer, and it will let you slot a dice into one of those, and then based on your skills and the value on the die, uh, depends on your outcome. It's a really simple thing because if you're just putting a die with 1 on there, things are probably not going to go super well. But if you put 6 in there, things are almost guaranteed to go very, very well. And the game does a really good job of saying like, hey, you put a 1 in here, you have a 50% chance for it to be neutral or a 50% chance for it to be negative. So it's really clear about here are the chances that you're going to run into. And man, I am a sucker for having this kind of restriction. So I feel this way about Citizen Sleeper that I do about Hand of Fate 2, which is take the trip with me for a second. Where I like the idea of tabletop RPGs, but I don't want all the stuff around it. I don't want character sheets. I don't want a dungeon master. I don't want 6 people sitting around the table and like coming up with a story. Like that's not the part that I want. The part that I do want is this kind of self-contained story that is well told, that I have some control over, but the game system has the rest of the control over it. So I like this game a lot because it has an incredible storyline, and it just like we talked about with The Ascent, it's one of the few games that gets Cyberpunk right. And I have some control over the game because I get to make my own choices in the story. But I like that the other half of the game is you're literally rolling the dice and seeing what happens. And the game, unlike Tharsis, game isn't mean about it. It's not looking to kill you on your very first turn. But, you know, if you have a bad roll, you're going to have a bad time. Again, not killing you, but it will... You do have 2 bars that you're kind of managing. Your energy, which is the shorter white bar, and then your kind of status, which is the longer bar. And they do a really good job, and this is why I think they're really great at Cyberpunk overall. So your character is what they call a sleeper. It is an emulated consciousness of a rich person that's in cryostasis. And your character as a sleeper is supposed to be essentially, you know, this person is over there kind of keeping themselves asleep for something. And your job is to go out and work off their debt for going in cryostasis. And you have escaped, and you've escaped to this kind of essentially like ring space station. And one of the horrible things that the company that makes these sleepers does is you have planned obsolescence built in. So they need to give you this injection or medicine or whatever every once in a while to make sure that your body doesn't shut down, and you don't have that anymore. So one of your initial kind of goals is, well, how do I stop myself from dying now that I don't have this giant company's medicine? So it kind of gets the assignment, so to speak, for Cyberpunk. Before I keep blathering on too much about this, how much have you played this?
I barely played any. Like I think I went through like Arrested once, and I think that's like, you know, you get down to the planet, you kind of get the intro. So I wandered around and did a few things. I did I think 2 jobs, one of which I failed. I asked around trying to find what was I trying to find?
A doctor, I think, is the first thing you're
Oh,
trying to figure
yeah.
out. Yeah.
I found the doctor. I found the doctor and talked to him. I got some
Mhm.
free food somewhere. And I'm waiting on the doctor to get back with me because he just informed me about the perishable situation I was in.
Right. Right.
So I basically got to day 2, and then it was like, I probably better go to bed, and I haven't been able to play it since. But
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
it's on the short list, man. That game seems super cool.
Yeah, I loaded my save game up today when I started playing it this morning. I think it says I'm at 75 cycles. So 75 days essentially.
Oh wow.
I haven't died or anything. I have seen what appears to be most of the endings of the game. One of the neat things the game does is it gives you don't have quests, you have something they call drives, and it's essentially you're trying to figure out your place in this system. You're trying to figure out what you want to do and how to survive. Once you kind of get your basic survival skills down, it's sort of like, well, what do I, as a new person, what do I want to do? What's going to drive me? And I've seen the end of the majority of those, which is they are very clearly endings. I'm not going to spoil them here since this game's like 2 days old. But they very clearly give you choices to say, are you going to do X or are you going to do Y? Some of them, for one reason or another, will have you kind of leaving the station. I haven't chosen any of those because I kind of haven't found my ending. I'm not entirely sure I will. But I appreciate that they don't really lock you into an ending. They give you all these options of like, okay, you've done all these missions for this drive now. Do you actually want to go do this thing, or do you want to kind of stay here? The other thing that I really like, so number one, if anyone's interested in this, again, it's on Game Pass. It's only about 6 hours, maybe a little bit longer if you read a little bit slowly, which, no judgment. So it's not a super, super long game, so don't think you're hopping into like a 40-hour thing. But the thing that I like that it does, and it's a thing that I really wish more narrative games did, is let's say you're going and doing this side mission for someone, and they give you all of these conversation things, and let's say, as an example, they're kind of helping you for seemingly no reason. You can make two choices. I'm just giving this as an example. One is like, why are you helping me? And the other one is thank you. And the thing that I really love about this game is if you ask, why are you helping me? This character will probably say like, oh, I feel badly for you, or I've been in, yada, yada, yada. And they give you kind of a backstory. But if you say just thank you, the great part is you get, I know this doesn't sound revolutionary, but you get a totally different dialogue tree. So it's not just thank you, it leads you back to the other one where it's like, oh, I figured I'd help you. It's just like, you say thank you, and they're like, all right, no problem, I'll see you later. And like, that's the end of the conversation. Or like, maybe that character really likes brevity, so they like kind of nod at you and leave. It's not that both options lead to the same solution, which not enough games do. Yeah. So I like Citizen Sleeper a whole lot. I think it's really well written. I think the gameplay is really great. Once you kind of find your footing, kind of like the balance between getting stuff done and keeping yourself alive and making friends and finding your place. And I think the art style is really great. I think it's super, super, super cool. I hope more people play it because it seems like a cool little. Only one person made it too. The only other person who worked on it was the person who did the soundtrack. And the soundtrack is really good.
Yeah, I was listening to it on Spotify the other day.
Yeah, it's great. So go try Citizen Sleeper. It's really something else. I really like it. That's all I played though. Did you have anything else you played this month?
That was it.
All right. Let's head into our releases for May 2022 then. I'm never going to pronounce this game's title correctly. Untitled Chronicle Rising comes out for Xbox One, Series consoles, PC, PS4, PS5, and Switch. So...
This isn't like a sequel to the N64 game, is it? Or am I thinking of something different?
So, this development is a little bit weird. People probably think of Bloodstained as kind of a similarity to this. So, the Suikoden team started a Kickstarter a while ago for Untitled Chronicle. That got successfully backed in no time. As one of their stretch goals... So that's that game is very much a traditional turn-based, gathering 100-something characters, etc., etc. This game is the kind of a prequel to it, made by a different team, and this is a 2D side-scrolling kind of action RPG, as opposed to a standard turn-based JRPG. So it's kind of like Bloodstained, where they had like that NES-style 8-bit side-scrolling platformer thing that was a stretch goal. This is very much the similar thing. So this isn't the turn-based JRPG. This is the hack and slash kind of platforming one. This is on Game Pass day and date as well, so you can check that over there. This seems cool. This seems like a nice little thing. It looks good. Seems like it has some fun action. It doesn't seem like it's going to be super long, and hopefully it's neat, because I think these games seem kind of cool, and if this is a good intro to that world, I think this could be a cool little thing to play.
Yeah, it's nice. It's on Game Pass. For people without Xbox, it looks like it's only going to be like $15 on Nintendo.
Oh, that's nothing. Yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah, and like it's a real good looking game from these screen grabs too. So
yeah, it has a cool style, like almost cel shaded, but kind of not. Like it's kind of a neat thing. Next game is a game that I somehow totally missed that's going to come out. I'm a little grumpy I didn't realize it was coming out. Vampire the Masquerade Swan Song comes out PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Series consoles, Switch, and PC.
So I only heard about this like a week or two ago too. Like
I only heard about it today. Like I don't To be fair, there's a ton of Vampire the Masquerade stuff coming out, not just games, but like all sorts of things that are what is it? What's the world called? What's like the overarching umbrella? World of Darkness?
Yeah, World of Darkness. That's
okay. So there's like a lot of World of Darkness stuff that's coming out. So something is, and the Battle Royale just came out like a week or two ago, so it's not too surprising.
I mean, Paradox bought them, so like they're bound to be a more functional company at some point in that transition.
Right. This one seems really neat because it's essentially you play as 3 different characters in kind of it's an RPG, kind of like a narrative-focused decision kind of thing, where you're switching between the multiple characters, and it actually looks pretty cool. I feel like this is maybe more of the thing that I want out of Vampire the Masquerade than other things. I think that's why we were so grumpy about Vampire the Masquerade Coteries of New York, where it's like, man, you got so close to like being the perfect thing. So it almost seems like from the gameplay and the previews and everything, if you kind of liked the things that Telltale was doing with their games and kind of the Life is Strange games and stuff like that, this kind of looks like it's in that same vein. Sorry, no pun intended. But with the Vampire the Masquerade stuff. So I'm going to keep a close eye on reviews on this, because this seems very much like more of the stuff that I want out of Vampire the Masquerade. I don't really want the like larger exploration RPG stuff that Bloodlines is, although Bloodline 2 is Bloodlines 2 looks really good. But this seems more kind of up my alley.
I have no faith Bloodlines 2 is ever going to come out now that they
just
fired the first company made it, basically.
It's just I feel like every time we hear news stories of that, it's like, all right, the director and all of the senior developers have left. Oops, we fired the team. Well, don't ask about the new team. They're working on it. And it's just like, what what's happening?
Yeah, like I don't need I like the exploration parts of Bloodlines.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish you could take all the combat out of
it. Yeah, and I feel like that's what I'm hoping Swan Song is, where it's kind of your to me the real strength of the Vampire the Masquerade stuff is the politics and the houses and the interplay between all these different characters and all these different types of races and stuff. Like you remove the combat from something like that, I am also not going to be upset, because that's not like I've been looking at that werewolf game that's seems like it's a lot like what we wanted out of Coteries of New York, and I'm thinking like it also seems very much like Citizen Sleeper, but like that's more of the stuff that I want. Like you can kind of emulate that tabletop RPG stuff that I think is so interesting about Vampire the Masquerade, or the World of Darkness stuff. I'm okay with you not putting like third person action RPG fighting in there. Like I'll be okay. Yeah. Let's move on to news stories here. We just got a trio of quick ones here. Some original Elder Scrolls games are free on Steam. Bethesda is shutting down their Bethesda.net launcher or whatever they called it.
I hate that thing so much.
Yeah, so you can, if anyone was using it, go to Bethesda's website. You can transfer some stuff over to Steam. I don't think I've ever used that thing, so I have no idea what was ever over there.
Steam launches their launcher now, I think. Like,
oh, okay. Interesting.
It's been a minute since I played a Bethesda PC game, because they just don't market games to me anymore. But
right. So if you've ever been interested in some of the kind of very old original Elder Scrolls games, both Arena and Daggerfall are both free on Steam. They are older experiences, maybe to kind of put a shine on it. There are repackages and there are kind of serious mods you can put out there to kind of maybe put some quality of life stuff on there if you're struggling with it.
So let me tell you two things about those. Actually, I'm going to say something about every game you're about to list, just so you know.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Arena 1, that's the entire continent of Tamriel. Mm-hmm. So Skyrim is in it. I don't think Morrowind is, but the Dark Elves country, which name escapes me right now, is. Although they may have like a capital of Morrowind or something in there. Anyway, point being is all the games are in it.
Okay.
But also, and it is like a big open world thing, but it's the graphics of like 90s Doom.
Right.
The key to that game is get something of Pass Wall, which literally just deletes the wall in front of you.
Oh, wow.
And it will make the game a lot easier. Daggerfall, go into it not expecting to complete the main story. Because it doesn't matter how many times you save, like your game could be glitched when you start and you won't know till halfway through.
Sure. Truly the 90s PC game experience.
Yes. And I don't know if anyone ever went back and fixed it. Like Daggerfall is technically, I believe, still the largest of all the Elder Scrolls games, but that's because so much of it is procedurally generated. But it'll generate dungeons where you will enter and you can't get to the exit. Like it's impossible. And
yeah, I bet there's some probably pretty big fan patches out there.
Yeah.
For especially for Daggerfall.
Yeah, and I think you can climb stuff in Daggerfall too, but it's been years and years and years since I played it. And this is also back when you could, like, they had running as a skill, and so if you wanted to level up quick, you could do a custom class. And your classes level up based on your progression in the 3 major skills you choose. So you could choose running, and like 2 other like really easy things to level up, and you could level up your stuff real quick.
Right.
And there's also definitive differences in the races. If you choose an Argonian, they are way like you will move faster across the map than any of the other races by leaps and bounds. So anyway, sorry, continue.
No, you're okay. They also put on for about $5 or $6 a piece an Elder Scrolls Legend: Battle Spire and the Elder Scrolls Adventures: Redguard, which sounds an awful lot like 2 adventure games.
So, Battle Spire is a dungeon crawler.
Interesting.
They took the system from Arena, and then they said, you're going to go to the dungeon might actually be called Battle Spire. I don't remember. It's a game that I haven't played much because I bought it when it came out, and it worked on my computer once and never again because it was a floppy disk game, and there was nothing I could do.
Truly 14. The 90s PC experience.
But that is a straight-up dungeon crawler. So, Redguard, however, is an adventure game platformer.
Adventure game platformer. Wow, okay.
You play a dude from Hammerfell who has, I can't remember if you have a pirate ship or if you're just a pirate without a ship, but somewhere it's kind of a swashbuckling adventure. Like I remember.
Interesting.
One of the puzzles was like you have to do this really complicated set of jumps up this Dwemer thing. But that one's kind of neat, but it's also very much like in that 90s Tomb Raider vein.
Yeah, like Heretic 2 was another one where it's like, this is a third person like hack and slash platformer, which is definitely a choice.
It might have combat in it, but I don't think like that's not the focus. It mainly wants you wandering around and jumping on things, and
puzzle solving and whatnot.
Your main character has a personality and a story path.
Right. So
anyway.
that seems neat. That's both of those are about $5 or $6 a piece. So you go play some classic Elder Scrolls stuff. Next news story here: the Shadowrun Trilogy coming to consoles June 21st for PS4, PS5, Xbox One Series, consoles, and Switch.
I love these games so much.
Yeah, I have already pre-ordered this. I believe they're coming to Game Pass day and date. I'm fairly sure that's what the Game Pass app has been saying as I have been in there. I pre-ordered this for PS5 because that's kind of my daily driver. And it was, I think, $30 for the whole trilogy, which seems pretty cheap for all 3 games.
Like you got 100+ hours a game there probably.
Yeah.
And
it's $40, which is still very reasonable. Very reasonable.
But I believe it's discounted to 30 until it comes out, and then it goes up to 40.
Right. Yeah. So if you pre-order it, you get $10 per game. I know you really enjoyed all 3 of these games, which is a big part of the reason why I pre-ordered it. And I thought, I could use kind of a like mashup between an XCOM strategy RPG plus visual novel cyberpunk-y thing. Apparently, I'm kind of in the mood for Cyberpunk the last year or so. Ironically, I haven't played Cyberpunk 2077, but I played everything else. But yeah, I'm very excited for this stuff to come out. And I have really enjoyed these games from afar, and I'm kind of excited to start digging into them.
So, and just so you know, all 3 games are individual stories. They are not sequels to one another.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Shadowrun Returns is the roughest one.
Right. Is that the first one?
Yes.
Okay.
And that one, I believe, is like, honestly, I kind of feel like everyone should just, like, I'm worried that people are going to play it and not like it and then not try the other 2, which are downright amazing. And like, it's not a terrible game. It's just they hadn't figured out how to do the hacking in it, because you you run into a lot of situations in all three games where your hacker has to go into basically the Matrix,
Right.
and you have to defend the hacker while he's doing that. He or
Okay.
she is doing that. And the first game, they have some incredibly frustrating battles with that.
Mm.
And the first game's only 20 or 30 hours or something like that. You know, it's not super long. But the second game, they take the same system and they design around it better. And then the third game, they completely redo that system.
Interesting. So would you
and
recommend for the first game, maybe just put it on the easiest difficulty and just kind of like get the story, get the world, kind of get the basics of Shadowrun, and kind of get. I don't want to make it sound like I'm gonna how it sounds, but just kind of get through it.
Yeah. Like, and there's not like a ton of side quests in the first one either, and they have some good characters in it. And Shadowrun is a really cool world, no matter which one you're playing. And they have,
like we talked about for Vampire the Masquerade, maybe combat isn't necessarily the focus that you're going into them for.
There's a lot of combat in all of them. Like, don't get me wrong there, but there's a ton of story. Like, if you haven't, if you played like it's like an evolution of almost like a Baldur's Gate or something like that. Except, with something closer to XCOM or Final Fantasy. It's XCOM Tactics. Like, it's that kind of tactical grid with half cover and full cover, and they have a bunch of different cool classes. Like, one of them, his whole I'm not going to remember any of their names right now, but one of them's deal is that you have drones. Like, you program and use drones, so you can control like 2 to 3 on the battlefield, and each one's kind of equipped to do different things. And then they have Street Samurai, which is your basic fighter, and you can kind of spec them out to be either ranged or melee. And I really like this. I don't like necessarily being a spellcaster, but I like spellcasting in these games because you like, especially the summons. The summons, there's a percentage chance every turn that your summon will turn against you.
Interesting.
Which is also true of the enemy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which can be really fun to kind of try and break that through whatever various skills. But the first game's, it's good. I just worry about it turning people off, because the second and third games are just magnificent, in my opinion. And I think you're going to fill both itches in terms of, you're going to get a really cool cyberpunk story with really detailed characters and backstories and side quests to go with them. And I think the second and third games, you have different, like, I can't remember if it's a base or a company or something, but you get a little bit of that. Like, I'm going to develop this thing on the side, like to give myself some bonus equipment or something.
Headquarters and stuff like that.
Yeah. So anyway, I love these games. Now I guess they're coming out on Game Pass. Maybe I'll play it on that. But I was probably going to lean towards Switch since I could lay down. I don't know if there's so much on that screen. I don't know if it'll be ideal for that small Switch screen. But
it seems like a great place to play it. But I feel like Disco Elysium kind of solved that problem for that. So I'm hoping they kind of take elements of that. But again, that's coming out June 21st, so listen to the July episode of this show for our impressions. And last news story here, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 release date moved up. Not delayed, not moved back, but moved up. It was originally going to come out in September. It will now come out July 29th. Nintendo came out and said, boy, development just was going super, super well, so we scooted that bad boy up, so now you can play it a little bit sooner. And if you read between the lines, something that was going to come out in July has probably been delayed until September, and I'm not entirely sure we've seen that yet. But that's okay. It's more time that people have to play this, and the better development is going. So it seems like everybody wins. So are you going to pick this one up?
Yes, I haven't decided on when. Like, I'm really annoyed they put the special edition as only being available on Nintendo's website, and they're not bringing it to stores.
That's frustrating.
Like, I have all the other special editions, and they usually release them for like $80 or something, so it's not like too insane. But It's I hope they get to use their full development team this time because they did not on 2.
Right. Hopefully, no more gotcha systems for Cosmos.
Yes, I've been told that is gone.
Nice.
But you still have kind of. My friend was trying to tell me Persona was, and I was like, well, it's kind of like what the gotchas were in the first one, wasn't it? But
right.
I haven't really dug into this a whole lot. I have a friend who's just like a fiend for all these Xeno games, and he kind of keeps me hyped whenever I don't feel it, but I never retain anything he tells me, unfortunately.
You just retain the hype.
Yes, I will probably order the special edition whenever it becomes available, and I don't know that I'll start playing it right away. It's just they always sell out of these things pretty quick, you know.
Yeah. So that's a pretty exciting one, and that's the end of our episode. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to visit us, you can do so at pickingupthepixels.com. Everywhere to find and follow us is on the right-hand side of the page, and including the link to our Patreon site, patreon.com/E1M1, the ones are numbers. Musum, where can we find you online?
You can find my solo music at musim.bandcamp.com. You can find my music with my band at axis-band.com, axis-band.com. And you can find me on Twitter at John Musum.
You can find all my shows over at e1m1.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you all next month. Bye.
Bye.